welcome back to our Steve Judd. My name is Sue Brain. And Steve and I were just talking about what we love to talk about today. And we've decided to talk about the 8 Sabbats, or as Steve calls it, the eightfold path. And this is the cycle of the seasons being marked tomorrow by the vernal equinox, and vernal means blossoming, so degrees Aries, so we're all being kicked off. It's a witch's new year, so this is a really potent time for us all. And obviously the equinox is when the daylight hours are equal to the nighttime hours. So Steve, where would you like to go with this?
Why don't we start with the Latin?
Go for it.
Always a good base to start. Get the bases right. Solstice. The sun is still. At solstice, the sun is overhead on either the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn. And it's a time of maximum elongation from the celestial equator and the Earth's equator. And it's the time of midsummer or midwinter, depending on which hemisphere you're in. And at that time, we have the longest number of hours of daylight and darkness, respectively. Whereas equinox, equal night, is the time where there is 12 hours daylight and darkness all over the world, where the sun is where the Earth is vertical on its axis for a day, and everywhere gets 12 hours day and night. There is a phenomenon I discovered last year called equinox, which happens about 2 days after the equinox, because at equinox you get 12 hours day and 12 hours night, but that's at the moment that the center of the sun rises and sets on the eastern and western horizon. But equinox is when the whole of the sun is above the horizon on the east and west, and that's a couple of days after the equinox in the spring or before the equinox in the autumn. And that's just a fascinating concept. Equal light.
Yes.
That's something that I discovered last year. But then that's the Latin for the 4 major cross-quarter points. And in the research I've done for the history of Western astrology, it's when Constantine was the emperor of Rome, he converted to Christianity from listening to his astrologers. He started listening to his priests, and Christianity took over from astrology as being the main prognosticator of theology, dogma, philosophy, and religion in Rome. But the astrology was so embedded in Rome, it was still people on the streets doing readings, and people were still using it every time, but they just stuck under the radar. And the Christian church, the new Christian church, couldn't get rid of it. So they adjusted their calendar. And that's why you have Christmas as December the 21st, because it's so close to the winter solstice and the Roman festival of Saturnalia. And that is why it's so close. And it's from those days that you get the cult of Sol Invictus, the returning, the rising, the eternal sun. And so, as with everything, the victors always rewrite history. But Christmas, as we understand it in the Christian religion, is just a tack on to a celestial date.
Yeah. And they all are. So is Easter.
They all are.
I think, I might be wrong here, Steve, so please correct me. I think all of these decisions were made at the second meeting at Nicaea with Constantine, where they decided what was going to go into the Bible and how they were going to put the Christian message out with a sense of control around it as well.
Yes. And that's also the time where all the stuff around the Magdalene was written out.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think, it's about, for me, when I work with the Sabbat energy, I feel like it brings back the magic, the mystery, the mysticism of the cycle of life. And I just wondered where you were with that.
I've got a long-term history of going out to distant spots on the British surface where very few people are on the morning of winter solstice in the freezing rain or snow, or sometimes clear blue sky, and watching the sunrise at the moment or the morning of winter solstice. Because when the sun rises at winter solstice, it is my start of the new year. And by actually observing the sun come up over the horizon, it is like watching the birth of a new year for me.
Mm.
And that's fundamental to who I am. January the 1st is just a
Absolutely.
imposed date. Um, Similarly, the equinoxes, I don't, yeah, they're nice, but they're more for gardening. Um,
I think in the old
Sorry.
days they were there to celebrate what the
Yes.
abundance or reaping what we had sown. And I think
Yes,
call
very
it
much.
bonfire, the bonfires were very much part of that,
I mean,
and bringing back that and being celebratory.
yes, and spring equinox is basically when you can get the first crops in and start eating
Yeah,
from the fields again.
yeah,
And autumn equinox is like, hey, it's harvest time. Let's pick out, and
absolutely.
stash stuff for the winter.
Celebrate it. Yes, yes. So I
Uh,
think,
uh,
I mean, I love bringing back that energy, that and looking at the hedgerows, what the hedgerows are providing for us as the seasons go round. Because do you know what the hedgerows knows? And they're absolutely attuned into, well, if you look at herbology, it's full of astrological symbols. Each
of
herb
course.
has an astrological symbol.
This is why I consider Nicholas Culpeper to be one of the most important people in British, if not human history, because his ability to blend gardening, herbology, and astrology into one tome is
Yeah.
an incredible feat, and it's so accurate.
Yeah.
Culpeper's Herbal, everyone should have a copy.
I have it on my shelf.
Me too. Me too.
Somebody said something to me which I found fascinating. I want to see where you are with this. She said, well, she's into astrology, and she said she looked as the trees carry the energy of the transpersonal planets because they're big and they're slow, and then the hedgerows and what they grow carry the energy of the personal planets, because when you take a some form of herbal tincture, it works personally in your body. How do you feel about that? I
I
loved that.
never considered it, but I see. I can understand why that philosophy could be seen as being, well, certainly it is a philosophical viewpoint.
Yes.
It's a, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with it, but I'm not going to agree with it either. It's too much for my tiny little brain. Uh, um,
I
I don't
mean,
suppose that person happens to live in Glastonbury.
no, she doesn't.
Okay, right.
But I just love that. I just suddenly thought, oh my God, when you see a tree, it's holding that outer energy, and then
Yes.
the herbs are holding the internal energy, the more personal energy. It just made me think out of my little tiny box, really.
Well, when I've got into the writings of both Rupert and Merlin Sheldrake, and the idea of the interconnectedness of everything, and I know from my own personal experience that trees have a form of consciousness is stretching it a bit, but they certainly have a life force and a form of sentience about them.
Absolutely.
And trees actually, I believe that trees actually react. I know that trees react well to bird song.
Yeah.
That we know. We
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
The sap rises when a lot of birds sit in the trees. The sap rises a week or two earlier than it does in trees where birds don't sit. And birds know which trees are sentient and alive. But I also think that trees react very well to human laughter, and they certainly react well to a good hug.
Oh, they love a good hug. See, for me, the trees represent the grandmother and the grandfather energy. And again, I'm going to chuck this at you and see what you think. I wonder if trees carry the ancient wisdom because they're here for a very long time.
Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
it, go
just
on.
the other day, I was Wakehurst, just down the road from me, the wild form of Kew Gardens. And
Yes.
outside the mansion, and the mansion goes back to the 1300s. Outside, just outside the mansion, in the middle of the gardens, is this path that leads to nowhere. It stops in the middle of this giant yew tree. But you go to the yew tree, and hidden in all the bushes is an old plaque, and it says this tree was planted in 1200, and yeah. And I've been up to the Fortingull Yew a number of times in Scotland, and that's about 4 to 5 thousand years old. That
Yeah.
tree.
Do you know, last 2 years ago, I stood in a 4,000-year-old yew tree in, where was I? I was just in it was around what's that place up north? Shropshire. And I talked to the vicar because I was told about this tree, talked to the vicar, and the vicar was so proud. And he took me there personally. He said, "This is our tree."
Nice.
I mean, wow. And to stand, it's just awesome. And I love the fact you stands for everlasting life.
And it's poisonous. Life and death.
Yeah, life and death.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great tree. I have a yew staff that I've had for 35 years. And yeah, it's not going anywhere with that. It'll get burnt with me when I go.
Yes.
We're digressing.
Oh, yeah, we are. Let's go back. Okay.
There's also, apart from solstices and equinox, there's the 4 cross-quarter points. And these have also been absorbed and consumed by the superficiality of Christian hegemony. And when you think of how, for example, Imbolc, I think Imbolc is tied to the Christian idea of Lent. Certainly on from Imbolc, because Imbolc is halfway between winter solstice and spring
Right,
equinox.
yes. And it is
And then,
it marks the birth of lambs, and the ewe milk
exactly,
would have
it's
brought
the first bulbs, the
milk
first
of our
fruit, the
lives.
first,
Yeah.
yeah.
Snow.
And then in between equinox and summer solstice, you've got Beltaine. Now, many of us will know the story of the Beltaine fire. And the higher the fire, the higher the young men have to jump to make sure their bits don't get burnt.
And the girls are going, "Come on then."
Yeah, because the one who jumps the highest and the strongest gets
Yeah, gets the girl.
first in the queue.
That was in those days, obviously. I'm sure women are jumping the fire now
Oh,
as
they are.
but
Oh, they
traditionally.
are.
Yeah,
I can assure you.
yeah.
But it's a fertility thing because when you conceive a 9 month conception between spring equinox and summer solstice, then 9 months on, that baby's going to be born at Imbolc just as the ice and snow is melting. And then they've got 9 months warmth and heat for the baby to grow before it's winter again. So it's the natural time to have children, at least according to the old rules.
Yeah. The old traditions. Absolutely. You didn't want to be giving birth in the middle of winter.
But no.
No, thank you very much.
I mean, in modern days, it's random, but
Yeah.
that's
Well,
because we have technology and central heating.
yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of feels when we talk like this, Steve, I just feel how out of kilter we are with the seasons.
But that's why it's so important, even with all our modern world, to go outside under the stars and into the fields and just sit on the ground and put your fingers into the earth.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It seems so simple to do it, but so few people do it.
Yeah, and take your socks and shoes off. I've just come back from the Arctic Circle where I experienced golden silence, which I've never experienced before. And I can't put it into words because I don't have words to really do it justice. But anybody's watching who's been to the Arctic Circle and stood in the silence, they'll get what I'm talking about. And then this incredible, there are no planes flying overhead because they don't. And this rawness, and I suddenly felt connected deeply to Gaia, to the earth, and her beauty and her rawness and being, I know that if I had taken, I didn't have enough clothes on, I would die. And I love being on that edge, that
But
rawness.
did you go barefoot in the snow?
I did.
Good for
Like,
you.
you don't go long, you can't really do more than a minute, and even a minute's too long. Yeah, it's really, really cold. It was 16, 18 degrees under, minus 16, 18 degrees. But it just reminded me of rawness. And when I was a child, and I'm sure you'll know this too, we had proper winters. Well, I
Yeah,
remember every winter we had a sledge in the garage.
yeah,
That's what you did. You went sledging. So we are out of kilter.
we are. But then the seasons are changing.
Yes,
Everything's getting later,
yes,
which that doesn't change the fact that the days still have the same number of hours as they did 10,000 years ago. But the seasons, the weather of those days is changing in a cyclical way. And when you think that the spring equinox, which is now, well, it's always the start of Aries, but it used to point 10,000 years ago, it was in Leo, and
yeah.
it moves around very slowly, 2,160 years per sign. It's fascinating.
How are you with this theory that actually the age of Aquarius starts tomorrow?
Tomorrow,
Yeah,
hang
tomorrow.
on, I'll set my alarm. Um,
That's
uh,
that's what some people have been working out. I was listening. Oh God, I can't remember who the name.
I wonder if I'd say that if it wasn't an eclipse. Um, I am of the opinion that we are right now, literally now, not so much today, but over this last 12 months now and this next 12 months on the cusp of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah,
They're all the outer planets changing sign, the big lineup in a couple of weeks' time and in June,
yeah,
and the eclipses that are coming up, especially the eclipse in September at 29 degrees. It does seem to me that this is the end of
yeah.
a long cycle of suffering's a bit strong, but it's time now for people to sort of become more autonomous. And that's what the age of Aquarius is going to bring us, I hope.
Hopefully, healthy communities,
That would be
local
that
communities.
that will happen.
Yeah,
It's going to take a bit of a transition to actually get there.
yeah. Yeah, it's an
Um,
there's so much talk about this great split between people who wanting to to follow the humanitarian path, I'll put it that way, and the split. The other one is I want to be a trans person, and I'm so curious about all of this because I know I've made my choice where I want to go.
too long ago.
Yeah,
I
and
call it the difference between human beings and humans being.
yeah,
Um, but let's finish the cycle.
yes, let's do that.
Llamas. I call it Llamas because I can't pronounce the old way. I never know how to pronounce
No,
it.
I don't know either.
But Llamas is harvest. It's when everything's at its most fertile, fecund, plentiful, bountiful. It's the time of the feasting. And then, of course, Samhain.
Mm.
There is a strong notion that long, long ago, particularly in the British Isles, and obviously I include the Republic of Ireland in this for this purpose, that in the days of long ago, 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, the attitude of the communities was that there's only really two seasons. One starts at Samhain and the other starts at Beltaine, the dark and the light.
Mm.
And certainly Samhain is the entrance into the dark.
Mm.
And I know that most people associate Samhain with Halloween in October the 31st, which is just so much nonsense. Because true Samhain, it's important to realise that the Imbolc, Beltaine, Llamas, Samhain are the cross quarter points, and the actual date of it, astrologically speaking, is when the sun is at 15 degrees zero of the fixed signs. So when the sun passes at 15 degrees zero of Scorpio, that is the moment of Samhain. Now that's normally going to fall around November the 6th, 5th, 6th. Maybe coincidence that that's when we let off lots of fireworks in the UK for another reason. But I just like that, letting light out as we go into the dark. But the idea of going into 3 months of dark to reboot and replenish the soul in the dark.
And this sense of the thinning of the veil, I love that.
Yes.
So that other entities and beings are walking abroad and they're sharing or they're coming back to visit the land of the physical.
Well, the
And
veil was thinning anyway. I mean,
yeah,
the veil's been thinning for years,
yeah. But I love that.
hence circles and amongst other things, you know. So, yeah, we're getting pulled into joining a much grander life community than we previously suspected existed,
Yes. Yeah.
and I can't wait. It does mean that it's going to need to be some very hardcore fundamental changes in human attitude.
We're going to have to stretch our minds a bit and go,
Oh,
oh, okay, rather than, oh, God, kill it or it doesn't exist.
and the idea of the old hard technology is going to have to become more and more redundant. And I know that's going to hurt a lot of people,
Mm,
but if we want to move, there's no growth without pain.
no.
And without growth, you get stagnation, which leads to entropy, and that brings decay.
Yeah. Yes, it's going to be interesting to see how humanity evolves.
Well,
It's going to be really interesting.
on the one hand, I don't know that people like you and I we won't see the end result of
No,
this.
we're witnessing the beginning of the great change. Yeah.
But on the other hand, when you and I were born, look at what was happening. Television was a new invention.
Mm.
Still had wind-up radios and valve radios.
Yes.
Uh, there
Huge.
was no mobiles, no computers, nothing like that.
Mm.
Steam engines.
And you know, a lot of us didn't have inside loos. 70.
Didn't have inside toilets, didn't have central
We did, but
heating.
lots of people didn't.
I grew up in a house with no carpet and no linoleum, just
Yeah,
floorboards.
yeah,
You know, food was enough, but what not just past rationing when I grew up, but
yeah, that's right.
no, there was enough, but only enough.
Yeah,
And we've come a very long way in 65, 70 years. Very long way in a very short space of time. And it's fascinating watching the increasing acceleration.
mm,
I like to think that in certain ways I'm helping push it. As I said to you before, I
yeah,
dubbed a video into Spanish using AI last night, and the response is phenomenal. So I'm going to start putting out videos in Spanish and Hindi and Korean
yeah,
using AI because that's what it's for. Um, no, yeah, it'd be nice if it broadens my outreach. Great,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm not doing it for publicity. I'm doing it to get astrology into the world. And
absolutely.
uh, in 50 years' time, people are going to look back at us and going, well, yeah, they were the greats, but they were enough moving at a snail's pace.
As you're flying around in your car on or
Yeah.
teleporting or whatever, it's
I
coming.
just was we're having holographic conversations with people in the space hotels and
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah.
Zoom will feel like this antiquated technology. It's a bit like, do you remember in the old days, these huge telephones with great big long, they were brown cords and you have to dial the number and then you got it wrong. And I mean, gosh, we have come a long way. Steve, is there anything else we want to say more about the Sabbats, or as
Yeah,
we call it, the
in
equinox?
relation to what we just been talking about the acceleration of technology, never forget your roots. Always go and sit on the land because you're from this earth.
Yeah,
I know that your soul might be made of star stuff, but your body is a result of stuff that comes from the earth. There is a link to this planet, it's your home. And the idea of sitting on the earth in the stillness, in the quiet, even if it's in the rain, and put like a plug into a socket, pushing your fingers into the earth is an absolute necessity for grounding oneself whilst dealing with high minded concepts. Ground yourself at all times.
yeah. And these high-minded concepts are going to keep coming at you.
That's why it's important to pay attention to our roots and foundations and not so much the rituals, but the meaning behind the rituals of antiquity,
Yes.
because these have persisted for thousands of years,
Yeah.
tens of thousands of years in some cases. And we're not just going to stop doing them because of some new technological invention or new theology, dogma, religion that says, okay, this is the new religion, this is what you believe now. No, no.
No.
And the stars and the planets are outside of anyone's control.
And so is evolution.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
And just to finish off, if anybody really wants to connect strongly tomorrow, it is also the day of St. Bridget and Freya. And Freya, these are two goddesses of kind of fertility. So if you
Heidi.
feel like that, doing that, lighting a candle to Ostra, or Bridget, or Freya, or Eostre, which is the name for our goddess here, please do, because they are the bringers of spring. Okie
Lovely
dokie.
way to end.
So we'll see everyone next time.
We will indeed.
Bye
Catch you later, folks. Bye.
for now. Bye.